3, 2, 1.
This podcast contains content that may be disturbing for some listeners and is intended for a mature audience. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Unusual Curiosity. I'm Tracy.
I'm Heather.
And I'm Taylor.
Today, we're not going to talk about monsters under the bed. We're talking about real ones, and one who sat on a throne. The facade of marble palaces and tree-lined boulevards was a man whose hunger for power and wealth left millions dead. Tonight, we travel to the heart of Central Africa, to the Congo Free State, and we ask, how did one man manage to keep an entire country as his personal property, and why did it take so long for the world to see the blood on his hands? This is the story of King Leopold II and the Forgotten Genocide. King Leopold II became king of the Belgians in 1865, but ruling Belgium wasn't enough. He had bigger dreams, imperial dreams. The British, the French, the Dutch, they all had colonies, so why shouldn't he? The problem? Belgium wasn't really interested. The Belgian parliament didn't want a colony, and the people didn't either. So Leopold got clever. He set his sights on a vast, mysterious land in the heart of Africa, the Congo Basin. Roughly the size of Western Europe, it was rich in rubber, ivory, and minerals, resources the industrial world was thirsty for. At the 1884 to 1885 Berlin Conference, a meeting of European powers to carve up Africa, Leopold made a stunning offer. He would take the Congo, not for Belgium, but for humanitarian purposes. He promised to end the Arab slave trade, bring Christianity, and introduce modern civilization. The result? He was granted personal ownership of the Congo Free State.
I totally feel like you're telling us a bedtime story right now.
Is it making you sleepy?
A little bit.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, this is very soothing.
Okay, let's be clear. This wasn't a Belgian colony. It was Leopold's private kingdom, over 900,000 square miles, ruled by a palace in Brussels by one man. And what followed was anything but civilizing. Rubber was gold in the late 1800s. As bicycles, automobiles, and electrical wiring exploded in popularity, rubber became essential. The Congo had it in spades, but extracting it was labor-intensive. So Leopold created a system of forced labor. Entire villages were ordered to collect wild rubber from vines in dense jungles. If quotas weren't met, punishments were swift and horrifying.
I didn't know rubber came from like trees,
I was
vines.
just gonna say that, but I didn't want to sound stupid, so I was gonna blame it on being blonde.
Do you know how they get maple syrup from maple trees?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a similar process.
So it's like a liquid?
Yeah, they like cut the bark off the tree and the rubber just comes through the bark and pours into buckets. And
I didn't know rubber was from trees, and I didn't know it was liquid.
Yeah, well, you can do some research, producer.
She just taught us something new today.
I probably won't. I'll take your word for it.
Hands were cut off, villages burned, children taken as hostages, and the Force Publique, a private army created by Leopold, carried out these atrocities with military precision.
That's awful.
What a shit person.
Yeah. Remember this. The hands were severed, not just as a punishment, but as proof that bullets hadn't been wasted. Every bullet had to be justified, so soldiers would bring back severed hands to account for each one.
Okay, but here's the thing. If you're mad because someone didn't meet their quota, what do you think? Like, they
Cutting
can't
off their hand isn't gonna make it better.
Yeah, they can't work anymore if you cut off their hands.
I feel like the point of that was to motivate the rest of the workforce. Like, step up or
Sheesh.
you're going to get your hand chopped off. Like, it's brutal.
Dude, you couldn't do anything anymore. You couldn't use the bathroom right. You couldn't make your
You
food.
have a nub. You have a nub.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and in some cases, they took both hands from a person. It wasn't just one.
And back in those days, it probably didn't heal right, or they didn't do it right, and you could have died from it.
Right, or infection. It's the 1800s in the middle of Africa. I don't know what their medical services looked like.
Or sanitation.
Or
was
sanitation.
probably non-existent.
Just bleed out.
Yeah.
Bleed out.
Sometimes they killed people just to get the hand, and sometimes they cut them off from the living. One particularly chilling symbol emerged from this horror.
I literally just got goosebumps when you said that. I swear.
They have this thing in Belgium called chocolate hands.
Oh, what the fuck?
Is this going to make me not want to eat chocolate anymore?
No,
Okay.
no, it's a terrible story, but so,
It might help me
but nobody's
weight.
ever gonna not want to eat chocolate because of it. I wouldn't eat a chocolate hand, but I'll take a Snickers bar.
Is it like a chocolate bunny, but a hand?
Yeah,
That's messed up.
yeah. So in Leopold's native Belgium, particularly in a city of Antwerp, chocolate hands are still sold today. These sweets are often called Antwerp hands and are shaped like small severed hands.
Nope.
Now, officially, these confections are said to symbolize a medieval legend, that of a Roman giant who cut off the hands of those who refused to pay a toll, and whose own hand was eventually severed by a local hero. But the dark irony is these treats became popular in a country whose wealth was built, quite literally, on the severed hands of the Congolese men, women, and children. And for many, the imagery is not a coincidence. It's a macabre echo of the atrocities that funded Belgium's grand buildings, museums, and railways. So I did a little digging on the chocolate hands, and they came about in like the early 1930s as part of a contest, like a baking or confectionery contest. And that's where they came about. So because it was after this happened, I have a hard time believing that it was completely based on the story.
They must have won the contest.
I would say yes. I have a hard time believing it was solely based on the story of the medieval legend.
Yeah.
Oof. Yeah, pretty crazy, right?
Why would you want to eat chocolate that's shaped like a hand?
Yeah, that's weird.
Especially, it said it's like a severed hand.
But here's like it takes me to so say this was a Belgian legend that was from the medieval times. Maybe King Leopold took that and used it in the Congo, like as a thing. Maybe he was like, "Oh, this was a hero."
There's something to this.
Yeah, he was the hero of so the medieval legend of the Roman giant. So maybe he thought, "Oh, well, I'll do the same thing to the Congolese people and make it a thing for me."
How could you do that to people and feel good about yourself, though?
That's a good question. I think some people, they have no empathy for other people, especially coming from a time where, especially people of Africa weren't viewed as whole people because of their culture, their color, or whatever it was. They were just viewed as different. And you're talking about colonialism and how people that were in power thought that that was the way that everybody should live, no matter where they lived. So coming in and enforcing your own beliefs on another culture.
Yeah.
Wrong.
Yeah. Wow.
So for years, the atrocities were hidden behind a curtain of false philanthropy. The Congo was a blank spot on the map, far from European eyes. But in the early 1900s, cracks started to appear. Whistleblowers like George Washington Williams, an African-American journalist, visited the Congo and called it a crime against humanity. British diplomat Roger Casement documented the evidence. Activist E.D. Morel exposed shipping records, weapons going in, rubber and ivory coming out, no signs of legitimate trade. Even Mark Twain and Arthur Conan Doyle joined the outcry. Photos began to circulate. A child with both hands cut off, a man staring at the severed limbs of his daughter. The world couldn't look away anymore. Under mounting international pressure, Leopold was forced to surrender his hold. In 1908, the Congo Free State was transferred to the Belgian government, but for many, it was far too late. Estimates suggest between 5 and 10 million Congolese died during Leopold's rule. That's not a typo. That estimate is approximately 50% of the entire Congolese population during that time.
And how many years?
This was from 1884. So 1884 up till like 1904.
That's
So
not a
20
long
years?
time.
No, it's not a long time. Yeah, about
Oh
20
my
years.
gosh.
And he killed 5 to 10 million people.
Wow.
Yeah, disgusting. Leopold died in 1909, bitter and unrepentant. He had the windows of his funeral procession closed to avoid seeing the jeering crowds. Doubt if he was seeing anything at that time other than heat and fire.
Yeah.
To
Oh
this
my.
day, statues of him stand in Belgian cities, though many have been defaced, toppled, or quietly removed. Belgium has never formally apologized for the horrors of Leopold's reign, and in many history books, this genocide is still glossed over, if it's mentioned at all. Because did you guys ever learn about this in school?
I don't remember
I
it.
don't remember it either. But if history teaches us anything, it's that evil doesn't always wear a villain's mask. Sometimes it wears a crown and builds a museum.
I feel like these things are important to talk about because, you know, as we all know, history repeats itself. And it's just like the Holocaust. Like, as awful and horrendous as it was, it needs to be talked about because, you know, the millions of people died. People that no one really remembers personally. It's just sad to think about them just being erased in history.
Yeah. And genocides still happen today. They're happening right now as we speak around the world. And people don't talk about them. The news isn't covering those things, or they're not, because the mindset is still, oh, those people are just
It's not
lower class
happening.
people or different colored people, so they don't matter. That is completely untrue. I think anytime any mass killing of any type of people is done, it can change the trajectory of our future because you're taking away people that could have made a difference on
Yep.
some level or contributed to the birth of somebody coming into this world that could make a difference. I think it's just appalling how people can have no empathy for other people at all.
Psychotic.
Right.
Yeah. Or just, it's easier to just sweep it out into the rug and not think about it.
It's kind of like this always gets me because Taylor's always having me listen to these crime podcasts and whatnot. And one thing that just always alarms me is anytime there's prostitutes, indigenous women, or women of color, or drug addicts, or anything like that, they're viewed as just not as important to the world as other people.
Yep.
So they don't put as much effort into getting justice for those people as they do other people. And I just
Exactly.
think that's wholly unfair.
It is. Or, you know, the timeline doesn't go as fast as it normally would for anybody else.
Right. Or the people involved, for example, one of them was a police officer that was actually the perpetrator. And so getting the proof that he was actually the one doing it and convicting him took a lot of effort.
There's a lot of shady cops.
There is, and there's a lot of, for example, this person who is in power, people don't ever view them as being able to do anything wrong. And that's where it starts.
Yep.
Look at all of the world leaders that have just done terrible, terrible things to people and got away with it, basically.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Crazy. So King Leopold II, a real piece of work. There's your history lesson today. Thank you for joining us on this chilling journey into the past. If you found today's story interesting, enraging, or illuminating, share it. Let's bring to light the histories that were buried for too long. And remember, not all monsters hide in the shadows. Some sit on thrones cloaked in gold. This has been Unusual Curiosity. Until next time, keep questioning the stories you think you know. Bye.
Bye.